Good morning and welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. Got a lot to go over today. A lot of economic news just came out. 10 o'clock, pending home sales came out. We've got the revised GDP number that came out as well. And jobless claims came out today. So those are just some of the headlines for today, as well as the tariff ruling on President Trump's ability to utilize the tariffs. So that's kind of interesting. And then one of the big stories that's in the background that I don't see a lot of people talking about is what the continued disruption in the Japanese bond market that could really, if it goes any worse, could have a lot of effect here at home on not only our bond market, but on the entire economy. So we're going to take a moment and let's get into it. Again, welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. Good morning. So we're going to start off with our pending home sales. And this was actually kind of disappointing. I thought they would be better than they were, and especially in the spring market, April, everything should start to pick up a little bit, but we had a very sharp drop off on pending home sales in the month of April. And you can see here right across the board, our index fell to 71.3. What does that mean? Our baseline is considered 100, and that's based on sales during 2001. So our sales are roughly about 30% less than they were back in 2001. And you can see here where we are in the South that we dropped roughly 7.7% month over month in pending home sales. Now, this is projection of sales moving forward. Why the huge drop off? Really kind of a couple of things. I think number one, the uncertainty with the tariffs. I think that has hurt a lot. The quick rise in bond rates is another one. And you'll see from the jobless claims numbers that long-term unemployment is starting to stay higher longer. So this is kind of disappointing going into the summer. We've just finished up school literally yesterday. So normally May, hopefully we'll see a pickup in that. Not the disappointing number that we've got right here. And the market is still here in the South. It's still struggling. We're seeing continued promotion by the builders. They're not only, again, cutting prices, but they're offering the large incentives on interest rates. Some of the ones I've recently saw yesterday, I got one from Lennar where they were going up to a $75,000 price discount plus all closing costs. So they're just trying to move their product, keep things flowing on a regular basis. And we're continuing to see cuts. And over the past couple of weeks, where I've noticed it is beginning of May, we had a good number of showings on properties. It seemed like things had picked up. People, like we mentioned, were getting comfortable at around that 6.5% interest rate. But with the recent spikes, we're actually up around 7% again. So it's knocked again a number of people out of this housing market that we're currently in. So that's a little bit of a disappointment overall right there. And then when we get into the data for unemployment that came out today, initial claims not bad. It's up a little bit, about 14,000 from the previous week's level. But this is the thing that stood out is the advanced seasonally adjusted insured unemployment rate. Those are basically people who are on long-term unemployment, who are collecting the unemployment checks. This is the highest level we've seen since November 13th of 2021. What does that mean? It means people aren't going out and immediately being able to replace their job with another job. So what happens in that situation? We have people are going to pull back. They've got to tighten their spending. They're not going to be looking to move. They're not going to be looking, to purchase homes. So that is a little, again, is something that's kind of a warning of how the housing market is going to be looking over the next couple months. Love to see this number come down. Again, it's summertime. Hopefully we'll see this number expand and get that back on track. Then when we look at our gross domestic product, this really kind of hurts. You see here in Q4 last year, we were sitting just about 2.4%. Q1, they revised it. It's actually not negative. It is positive, but a very, very low number at 0.2% GDP. Why was that? Like a lot of people know, front loading of purchases, front loading of imports, trying to get everything in, do all the purchases before the tariffs went into effect. So seeing a lot of adjustments coming, a lot of it having to do, I think, with the reaction to the tariffs, to different things that are going on in the economy overall. And I mean, good news was that consumer confidence did grow in May, which, I mean, it was a nice uptick. It was up over 12%. So maybe people are starting to get over the hesitation, the fear, the uncertainty of what's going to happen with the tariffs, because now we've seen more of the motive, more of the strategy that President Trump is using to use these tariffs to negotiate better deals. And, working with different countries, different areas. Perfect example is the EU, providing the EU with a 90-day grace period to be able to negotiate better deals. Now, with the ruling that just came out for Trump, that the way he was using them was not legal. This was a three judge panel in New York. This ruling came out yesterday. Does it change his tactics? I think it does. I think it pulls some of his ability to push the negotiations. Reading through everything, he still has a lot of tools to try and incorporate the tariffs to get what he's looking for in trade negotiations. And of course, this is going to be immediately appealed. I wouldn't be surprised if they file for an injunction until, of course, it reaches, it's going to reach the Supreme Court. We're going to get a final ruling on this. But in the meantime, I think Trump, his team are going to continue to push forward, continue to work on those new deals. I think he's still got enough bullets in his gun to where he can push things forward. And you're not going to see a lot of these countries who may have looked at this and said, okay, well, why would I negotiate at this time? Because I just got a ruling. I can wait it out. So, a lot of stuff going on in the courts, a lot of stuff still up in the air overall. So it's just something to continue to watch. How has the bond market reacted overall? Really not doing much of anything. We took a huge spike up to roughly about 4.53%. But in the past day or so, we've actually come down. We're down below the 4.5. We're down to 4.4. So hopefully, because we did last week, we spiked above 7% interest rate for mortgages. Hopefully, we're going to see that pull back again, get us back under 7. I mean, it's not going to be by much, maybe 6.875, but overall, it's better than it was. But if you look consistency, I mean, we're sitting in a window between that 4.4 and just over 4.5 is really the window we're sitting in, and it's been there for a while now. And the couple things that I think could blow it up and could really, really cause rates to go through the roof is what's going on with the Japanese market. And I can't believe we're not seeing more about this, um, because it really could cause a lot of problems. And basically, what's happened in the Japanese market is their yields have just exploded on their long term. Their 30 and 40-year treasury notes. No, I mean, when you say nobody wants them, nobody wants them. Nobody's buying them. What they're having to do basically is a quantitative easing type of situation where the Bank of Japan is actually having to buy a lot of their own bonds. And it's thrown a lot of fears. We've talked about it, the carry trade unwind. What that was basically, again, Japan's interest rates were so low. You could go to Japan and borrow money at basically 0%. Bring that money back to the US and get a 3 to 4% return on that money. And when you're talking a lot of times billions of dollars, is what a lot of these funds were doing with this. So I could borrow at 0, turn around, make 3-4%, and just pay it back, and it didn't cost me anything. And I've made this huge interest off of this trade. And that was called a carry trade. And with this unwinding now, with their yields, I believe their 40 years up over 4% right now. So you got that at 4%, and we're sitting, the 10 years, the 5-year, we're sitting 4 and above. That trade's dead, completely dead. So there's people who have money and in the system, and because the 0% bond rates have basically, where the par may have been 100, is people are only willing to give you 80. They've got to make up that difference. It's almost like a margin call. So you're going to see a lot of people who are going to have to raise a lot of funds to make up that difference in the yields that they have to cover once the bonds mature, because they're not going to be getting their money back on it for what they bought it at. So there's a lot of things that are just really, really kind of nerve-wracking, because the other thing that they've mentioned is Japan is still one of our, I believe is now the largest holder of US bonds. And in order to prop up their own system, to prop the yen back up, they may end up having to sell treasuries in order to repatriate funds into Japan. And if that happens, along with the auctions that we have going on, it's going to force the yields up on US Treasury bonds. And that, again, is going to force rates up. So it's a very delicate situation now. Not sure which way it's going to head, but it's something that you have to keep an eye on, because it can force rates to go up. I know I've seen a lot of people out there, we'll be down, 6% by the end of the year. I don't believe it. I think there's too many economic winds blowing in the wrong direction at this time. Japan, our own debt situation. It's going to be interesting. We've got some bond auctions today, and I think that's going to tell a lot of where the market's going to sit. If it's a good auction, we can see yields start to come down. If it's another bad auction, where we may see the Fed come in and prop it up a little bit by purchasing some of the bonds themselves, then I think we're going to be forced to see the bond yields go up, and we're going to continue to see the interest rates go up. So it's going to have a continued negative effect on the housing market. So there's a lot going on, and we just got to continue to keep an eye on it and try and figure out, which way is the market heading. I personally, I would love to see rates get down. And I think the only way that we can do that, quite honestly, is um, stop spending. I know, Trump's out there touting the big, beautiful, bill, but as a conservative, I'm glad there's several conservatives standing up right now and telling Trump, no, it's just not it's big, but it is not beautiful. I mean, we went through, took Elon Musk took Doge, and provided all these cost savings that none of them have been put into law, which they need to be. And I mean, quite honestly, all you had to do was not spend more, and you would have caught, I believe it was around 500 billion or to 700 billion, not positive of the exact number. And that would have cut the spending and then just freeze spending at current spending levels over the next 3 years. And you would have slowly seen that go down. I mean, one of the biggest fears I have is our interest payments, because with these higher interest rates, and having to redo billions of bonds. We're taking bonds that were 2 and 3% that are now maturing, have to roll them back over, and we're going to double the interest rate on all these bonds. I mean, we're over $1 trillion in interest payments on the U.S. debt right now. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I understand what Trump's plan is, what he's trying to force. What he's trying to do is force the interest rates down, and by doing that, be able to refinance the national debt into longer term, lower yield debt. But the one component he is not doing, and I totally disagree with him on this, is he is not cutting the spending. And the Republicans in Congress, you're a bunch of wimps. That's all I got to say about you, is you really are a bunch of wimps, because you're just going along to get along, which has always been, your complaint against Democrats, is all the Democrats toe the line. Well, that's all you're doing too, is you're towing the line, and you've got to stop and stand up and say, no, it's not. Hey, if you're that one person, they need that vote, hold the line. Just tell them no. You're going to get vilified. You're going to get, beat up in the press on the Republican side. But hey, it's the right and moral thing to do at that point. So with all this going on over the next 6 months, I don't see any relief in the interest rates. I just don't see it. So it's going to continue to make the housing market, that affordability issue is going to continue. I see it for the foreseeable future until some real change is made to help get the yields down. Because the Fed, they've told you flat out they're not going to do it. They're not going to cut rates. They're just not going to do it. And you got to find alternatives to that solution in order to force that down. So that's economically, that's what's going on right now. Here in Orlando, our numbers again are very steady. Nothing crazy, but continuing to be very steady overall. We had 421 closings last week. Average price came down a little bit, 5.6, but you see this fluctuate on a weekly basis. Our inventory is continuing to grow a little bit slower than it has in the past. I would expect that maybe over the next 2 to 3 weeks to grow a little bit now that people are done with school. Orange County finishes school next week. Seminole County just finished yesterday. A lot of people wait till the end of school to actually look at putting their house on the market. So I think we could see this number continue to grow. We're up over 9,000 single-family homes in inventory right now. And a lot of that doesn't also include the builder inventory as well. That's a high number. It's not as high as it was in 2018, 2019, but still, that's a good number. It's providing a lot of people a lot of choices, and buyers are being extremely picky. They want to make sure that they, if they're going to be paying an interest rate close to 7%, that they're going to get exactly what they want. So as a seller, where before you could kind of, let your house, have a little ding there, have a little ding here, you can't do it. You can't do it. You're going to have to take the time, make sure your house is in order, make sure everything is fixed so that people don't have to worry about it. And quite honestly, it's worth that little extra upfront because it's going to help you maintain your price overall. And here we look at the numbers in the actual breakdown, and you see, here we are. We're up to over 5 months worth of inventory right now. And then again, with the higher end homes, the over a million, we're still sitting at roughly 8 months of inventory. And then when we look at our original list to sales price, which this is the one, it's kind of my Bible. It's the one I go to overall. We're sitting at 93.5%. So that is a good discount over the original price. Tells me people are still trying to price their houses a little bit higher and having to make adjustments to it. Even if a house 2 months ago comped at say $400,000, with the slowing in the market, you may have to go 395. You may have to go 390. There is price reduction that is happening, and our days on market again is continuing to grow. We had dropped a little bit. We went through that little spike towards the end of April, beginning of May, but now we're back up to 65 days on the market. Then you see our weekly sales. End of the month we did a little peak, and then boom, dropped right off. And the consistency really since January, that right around that 400 homes per week mark. I mean, just consistent. No real spikes, which this time of year you think you would start to see that jump, hopefully even 500, 550 on a weekly basis. Not happening. It's just not happening. And then our inventory, just slow, steady climb. We are up nearly 25% since January in the amount of inventory on the market. That's a big jump. That is a very big jump. Going into the condo market, just nothing exciting to talk about in the condo market. I actually was in discussion with a gentleman about his home when they bought his condo. He bought 3 years ago at 265, and I felt extremely bad when I had to show him the comparables, because the comparables in the community now are 180 on a good day. So I mean, he's really, quite honestly, lost about $80,000 in equity in his condo locally here. And it's just, and his HOAs had jumped from roughly about $400 to $850 a month for the HOA. So when you're looking at that and you're just thinking, how many people actually want to spend $850 a month on an HOA payment? The size of that pool that we're going to be able to go after is extremely low. So that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough one to get through. Then our average days on market for condos, I mean, we have jumped to 98 days, almost 100 days on market for condos right now. Inventory has kind of leveled out overall. So I think a lot of people are just realizing that it's not a great time to put your house on the market if you're selling a condo. It's hopefully they just revised the law that forced a lot of the HOA fees to take a jump. I'm hoping that this gives them some relief, because now allows them to actually borrow funds to help do some of the renovations, which previously I'm not sure exactly how it was, but I guess they actually had to raise the funds. That's the reason why a lot of these condo fees went up. A lot of these condos had assessments that were astronomical, $15,000, $30,000 assessments on the condos. And that's That's a hard pill, very hard pill to swallow. So that's where our Orlando market is sitting today. Thanks for joining us. Please remember to always like, subscribe, and join us every Thursday here at the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.